The transmission came through at 3:42 Earth Central Time. Most night officers would have ignored it, flagged it as another phantom ping bouncing off Saturn's magnetic belt or a leftover echo from one of the old colony beacons still drifting half dead. Beyond Pluto. But I wasn't most officers. I was stationed alone on the Europa Orbital Watchtower, Sector Kilo, assigned after the Idris event, not for punishment, though it felt like one, but because I was the only one who kept listening after. The others stopped. The signal wasn't garbled. It wasn't encrypted or masked in static. It was clean. Too clean. My hands froze on the console as the feed opened, the AI interpreter flickering to life with near-instant decoding. I expected a distress frequency, maybe a dead language, a cultural broadcast for a lost god. Instead, I heard them. We are the Solari. Please. To any sentient civilization, we are being hunted. Our colonies burned. Our people harvested. Is there anyone left who fights? The room went still. Even the station's environmental hum seemed to dull under the weight of those words. The voice wasn't mechanical, wasn't monstrous. It trembled. It begged. I've heard death on coms before, watched it crawl out through static like a roach. But this wasn't death. This was a scream. I saved the signal. Flagged it priority red. Sent it straight up the chain. They shouldn't have answered. But Earth did not because we cared. Not because we were noble. Because when something cries loud enough and long enough and pathetically enough, Earth doesn't send comfort. We don't send peacekeepers. We don't send heroes. We send predators. 3 hours later, I was back on the ground, Earthside, rushed through secure transport to high command. No sleep, no questions, no debrief. Just straight into the cold-lit corridors of the command dome. That's where I saw him again. Commander Grant. They said he was retired. They said he couldn't walk without pain anymore. They were wrong. He stood in front of the war room holoboard like a reaper at his altar. Skin like burnt leather, eyes like sharpened glass. Half his face was scar. The other half didn't need to be. Everyone in the room stood straighter when he spoke. You boys remember Daggerfall? Silence. You remember what we did to the insectoids who thought Earth wouldn't fight for its own miners? We remembered. 12 days. 100,000 dead. Not one human lost. A system turned to ash. No graves. This time, it's not us being attacked. It's them. He tapped the display. Red dots spread like infection across a cluster of Solari worlds. Burned, gutted, erased. The enemy is called the Drake. 7 feet tall. Bio-armored. No empathy. They implant their young into living hosts. He paused. Sound familiar? We didn't answer. We didn't need to. But this time, they're not coming to us. The holomap shifted again. Earth fleet formations formed over the target system. We're going to them. That's when I saw the roster. Names scrolling in blood-red script. Top-tier operators. No flags. No insignias. All marked under one designation. 19. The unofficial name whispered in the back halls of Earth's darker military corners. The Reapers. I was listed as squad lead. Grant looked at me, then to the others. You're not here to save them. You're here to remind the galaxy why the stars went silent the day Earth got angry. He walked off, leaving us with the kill coordinates and one final truth. Someone cried for help. Earth answered. And when we answer, mercy doesn't land. We dropped into hell without ceremony. The official mission name was Operation Vanguard Resolve, but no one called it that. The Solari called the planet Varex 7, though the few survivors we met would later just whisper the Ash World. To us, it was the place where we stopped pretending we were still human. The Sovereign Vengeance didn't use beacons or warning lights. It slid across the void like a shadow wrapped in steel. A Templar-class destroyer with no paint, no banners. Only scorched plating and kill marks carved deep into the hull. You didn't board a ship like that unless you were ready to be erased from history. Inside the launch bay, the Reapers stood silent. 5 soldiers. No chatter. No morale checks. No prayers. Carter sat across from me, loading his magnetic rifle with a rhythm that sounded too casual. Vance double-checked the smart mine belts. Brody locked in the infiltration route on his HUD, his jaw clenched like he hadn't unclenched it since the last war. Then came the thump. Drop pods. No stabilizers. No landing gear. Just vertical steel coffins loaded with rage and teeth. They sealed around us with a hiss, and a voice crackled into our ears. Reapers, stand by. Mission parameter. Total clearance. Confirm receipt. I tapped the side of my visor. Confirmed. 3, 2, drop. And then gravity vanished. No engines. No gliding. Just pure terminal descent into fire. The atmosphere of Eric 7 was thick with soot, dense enough to choke radar. As we hit the lower layer, we saw the flames. An entire city burned into glass craters. Towering structures melted to black slag. A skyline of tombstones. The Solari didn't have a military. They had prayers. We landed hard metal screaming. The pod crunching against what used to be a medical sanctuary. I was the first out, rifle up, sight scanning. The sky was crimson. The trees had no leaves, just skeletal branches twisted by heat and rot. The wind carried a stench I'll never forget. Burned flesh and spoiled eggs. Chemical rot. Alien death. We weren't here to help. We were here to hurt back. I didn't even speak before we moved. Formation Alpha 5. Standard sweep pattern through Sector Delta. Carter spotted the first body, a Solari child fused into a wall. His chest was hollow, ribcage split open, organs missing. Then we heard it. Not footsteps. Not engines. Clicking. A slow, rhythmic clack of mandibles in the dark. Brody motioned left. We fanned out. That's when it hit us. Not with sound. With movement. A Drake scout burst from the earth like a missile taller than a human by a meter. Its body plated in glistening black armor, 6 limbs, 2 of which were serrated like execution blades. Its face had no eyes, just a mouth full of teeth hooked inward. It didn't charge. It leapt. I fired first center mass. Useless. Carter hit it with a concussive round, knocked it back 2 meters, but it didn't go down. Vance dove to the side, planting a mine. The Drake adapted mid-motion, curling its limbs like a gymnast. Flipping over the explosion. Smart. I lunged forward, switched to plasma bayonet, and drove it beneath the jaw. The creature gurgled, then shrieked, not from pain, from rage. As it died, another sound emerged behind us. Dozens more. The Reapers formed a circle. Triggers primed. No fear, only calculation. Hold your line, I ordered. Carter took a breath. Thought this was a rescue op. I didn't answer, because the truth was sinking in. This wasn't a mission. This was a test, and we were the ones being measured. We fell back toward the ravine edge, guided by Brody's HUD ping. Behind us, the Drake swarm hit like a tsunami of bone and screeching. Vance went down first, gutted. Carter pulled him behind cover, laid suppressive fire, and kept moving. We reached the edge of the ravine. No way down but vertical. I activated my gravity dampener and dove. The others followed, even as claws raked down from the ridge above. One of them, twice the size of the scout, screamed down the cliff after us. It didn't follow. It just watched. It watched us fall. We landed hard again. Bloodied, exhausted, but alive. Only 4 of us now. The Solari were right. The Drake weren't just predators. They were tacticians. Hunters. And worst of all, they were Evolving. We set up camp under a fallen arch of what looked like bone but turned out to be melted superstructure. Carter finally lit a cigarette. Brody cleaned his blade. I sat and rewound the battle in my mind frame by frame. We weren't sent to win. We were sent to send a message, and the Drake just sent one back. We followed the smoke. The ravine led us east, deeper into what the Solari maps labeled Sector Goron, once a thriving Terra cluster of refugee sanctuaries and diplomatic shelters. Now it was just ash and debris. Even our suits couldn't filter out the metallic taste in the air. Vance's blood was still on my gloves, crusted dark, sticky even through the polymer weave. Carter hadn't spoken since the fall. Brody's limp was getting worse. I was bleeding through my side plate, but none of us said a word. We were Reapers. We didn't talk pain. At 0600 OR's local time. We caught the signal. Faint, organic, biological, a Solari beacon. Not artificial, heartbeat-coded. The Solari had once used pulse-laced M signatures to guide their young across migration paths. Now that same pulse dragged us toward a hollow mountain twisted in on itself like a burned lung. The beacon came from inside. We approached with caution rifles drawn, scopes flaring thermal. The outer cavern was layered in resin, thick, viscous. It clung to the walls like sweat on stone. Every step made a sound, not loud but wrong, like treading on muscle tissue. Still twitching. Carter muttered, "This isn't a shelter." No, it was a nest. And then we saw the first body, or what was left of it. A Solari elder, limbs pinned open across a spined frame, his chest split and hollow. Not just dismembered, transformed. His torso had been converted into a feeding pod. Tubes ran from his core into the ceiling, pumping black fluid into egg sacs pulsing with heat. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All around us. Each one alive. Each one humming. Brody whispered, "We're in a birthing pit." That's when the lights flickered, not artificial, but bioluminescent sacs embedded in the ceiling, reacting to our presence. The Drake didn't build structures, they grew them. This wasn't a base. This was a womb. The walls pulsed. The air got heavy. We moved forward, careful, but not slow. Reapers didn't freeze. We adapted. At the chamber center was something I'll never forget. A Solari child, still breathing. Eyes wide open, strapped to a vertical brace. His abdomen bloated and moving from the inside. I stepped forward, all ready, reaching for the injector gun, but the child whispered, "They live through us." Then he screamed, not from fear, from birth. A Drake larva burst from his chest, screeching, writhing, covered in mucus. It hissed at me like it knew my name. I fired twice. First to end the child's suffering. Second to end the thing that stole it. Carter didn't flinch. Brody didn't blink. We didn't mourn. We burned the nest. Incendiary charges, thermal grenades, plasma fire. The entire chamber lit up like Judgment Day. The resin screamed. The eggs thrashed. The walls shuddered. But something screamed back, from deeper in the hive. A roar not like the others. It had weight. Command. Will a queen? Not yet. A high-bred mother, first phase of hive sovereignty. She dropped from the ceiling like a nightmare. Woven in bone, 10 feet tall. Covered in plates that shimmered with veins. Her mouth unfolded sideways, revealing a second set of fangs laced with tendrils. She didn't attack. She studied us. Carter raised his launcher. Orders? I hesitated. And that's when she spoke, not out loud. Not in sound. Inside my head, you are not gods. You are not fire. You are just noise. I pulled the trigger. She vanished into the flame, but the message stayed. We exfiltrated the pit, burning everything behind us. No samples. No trophies. Just death. Ashes and silence, and the hum of the hive echoing still. On the cliff above, we spotted Solari survivors. 20, maybe 30, covered in filth, eyes sunken, hiding in crevices like prey waiting for a storm to pass. One of them, an elder with gnarled limbs and shivering hands, stepped forward. Why? Why did you come? I didn't answer, because the real question wasn't why we came. It was what we'd become. We left them with rations, weapons, directions to the evac point. We didn't stay. We weren't saviors. We were proof that fear comes in human form. When the sun finally rose over Varric 7, it didn't bring warmth. Just light over a dead place where something monstrous had grown, and where something worse had answered. We moved by night. Not because it was safer, but because during the day the sky watched. The light here wasn't natural. The sun burned crimson, thick with interference. The clouds moved against the wind. The stars above twisted in slow spirals, like something massive was swimming in the upper atmosphere. Brody called it what it was. Artificial orbit distortion, he muttered, checking his scanner. They're bending light for camouflage, Carter spat in the dirt. That's not tech. That's a goddamn instinct. He was right. We'd seen the Drake up close. We'd torn them open, melted their breeding pits, crushed their larvae under boot. But nothing prepared us for this next part. Not weapons, not drills, not Earth's best simulations. This was different. This was architecture. According to surviving Solari data, there had once been a communication nexus here deep in the mountains of Lari's Rift. The place was supposed to be a stronghold. But when we arrived, we saw no fortress, only a massive spiral valley carved into the shape of a helix, stretching for miles, perfect, mathematical. Alive. The walls weren't stone. They pulsed faintly under our suit lights. The soil vibrated. Not a tremor. A heartbeat. And then came the sound. Click, dash, click, dash, click. Like bone on glass. Carter froze. Contact? No, Brody said, eyes narrowing. Invitation. He was right. They weren't attacking. They were drawing us in. So we went in. Weapons hot. Visors sensed. No backup. No exit. What we found beneath the helix shattered what was left of our certainty. The chamber opened into a perfect sphere. Inside were hundreds of suspended Solari alive, floating in translucent orbs, their nervous systems glowing blue beneath their pale skin. They weren't screaming. They weren't moving. They were dreaming. Dreaming with something. Carter approached one of the pods, scanned it. Neural net webbed to the chamber's central node. They're not prisoners. They're conduits. 4. What? I asked. He looked up. To it. Then the lights shifted. Not artificial. Bioluminescent tendrils slithered across the ceiling, coiling like thoughts. At the center of the room sat a figure, not a beast. Not a drone. A drake, but different. Taller. Still. Coated in matte black armor. Not grown for war, but ceremony. It sat on a throne grown from bone and steel and muscle, alive, pulsing, breathing. The thing had eyes, burning sapphire blue, and when it saw us, it didn't lunge. It nodded. Like it had been waiting. None of us moved. Is this a warlord? Carter whispered. No, Brody said. This is leadership. The thing stood, slowly. With elegance. It opened its mouth, not to speak, but to breathe, and when it did, our coms flickered. No static. A voice, not Earth's voice. Not Solari. A hybrid dialect, translated in real time by our neural rigs. You are not the apex. I felt my stomach twist. Then Carter raised his rifle. The Drake didn't move. He fired. The shot stopped, midair absorbed by a translucent barrier that flared like a ripple in water. The Drake blinked slowly. Then it did something that froze my blood. It smiled, mocking, cold. Human dash like dot as if to say we've studied you. We've learned your fear. Now we know your shape. Brody took a step back. We shouldn't be here. Too late, I said. I grabbed Carter by the collar. Fall back. Now, we ran. We didn't fire. We didn't speak. We escaped through tunnels lined with breathing tissue, past chambers where we saw Solari merged with machines, whispering in languages no one should know. This wasn't a base dot, it was a temple, a cathedral of flesh, grown to host thought, to feed on memory. The Drake weren't beasts. They were building religion out of war. When we finally breached the surface, the night sky above cracked with lightning, not natural, not weather, just a signal. We let you in. Now you know. Back at camp, no one slept, not because of fear, but because we had seen the truth. We weren't fighting animals. We were trespassing on sacred ground, and the gods weren't happy. We didn't debrief. There were no reports, no psych evals, no high command handshakes. When we finally returned to the sovereign vengeance, we didn't walk, we limped, bled, dragged. And no one asked why, because the silence around us was louder than the guns we carried. Grant was waiting, not at the medbay, not at the war room. He met us at the hull breach, where the loading ramp still bore the carbon scorches from our last drop, where the names of the dead were still etched into the floor, panels with bayonet tips and black ink. He didn't speak, just looked at us. One by one. My armor was cracked. Carter's eyes were sunken. Brody's limp had gotten worse, bone exposed at the joint, nanoseal bleeding out. We were barely alive, but we were still Reapers, and that, apparently, was enough. Grant turned his back and walked toward the war deck. We followed. Inside, the entire crew had assembled. 700 soldiers, black-armored, no insignias, no flags. Just war machines with human faces. Every single one had been handpicked, pulled from the bloodied ends of 100 ghost missions. The lights dimmed. A holographic starfield bloomed to life. 10 red marks pulsed across the map, each one a Drake hive world, fortress, moon, or breeding satellite. All active. All expanding. Grant stepped forward. This is not containment, he said. Voice low, steady. This is not recovery. This is not retaliation. He looked up at us with eyes that had seen too many wars to believe in salvation. This is extinction. He pointed to the first target. Operation Helmuth begins now. No cheers, no speeches. No medals. Just the hum of combat rigs sinking, and the cold reality that we had crossed a threshold no one ever comes back from. We weren't going to finish a war. We were going to erase a species. 3 days later, the drops began. Not pods this time. Full-blown invasion clusters. Thousands of them. Earth's entire Black Fleet had mobilized cloaked dreadnoughts, kinetic bombardment arrays, gravitic torpedoes, AI-piloted skirmishers, and squads like ours, surgically brutal, pre-approved. For war crimes before launch, we weren't just ghosts anymore. We were the hand that reached out from Earth's grave and choked the stars. Our squad no longer Unit 19. No longer a number was given a new name. The REAPERS. No ranks, no files. Just confirmed kills. Brody was rebuilt cybernetics running up his spine. Eyes enhanced, his limp replaced by carbon-reinforced gait. He walked like death wearing a human shell. Carter didn't return to the field physically. Instead, they plugged him into the Sovereign's orbital drone net. He became the eye. The artillery nerve. A man who once lit cigarettes now lit continents. I was still squad lead. Still breathing, but something inside me had already died. I could feel it. We hit our next target nest prime harder than anything I'd seen in 12 years of off-world combat. We dropped at terminal velocity, punched through anti-air fields with kinetic spears, scattered EMI mines mid-descent to blind. Their defense grid. The moment boots hit dirt, we weren't hunting. We were cleansing. Drake emerged in waves, 10-legged horrors, acid blood flyers, armored tunneler beasts that cracked ground like quakes. They fought like gods. We killed them like roaches. My machine gun didn't jam once. The new rigs were voice-linked. One word, and the next target lit up in red. Brody carved through their ranks like a myth etched in bone and fire. Carter dropped. Payload after payload from orbit, reprogramming death like a composer conducting thunder. By the second hour, 3 squads were already gone. No screams. Just black smears on the coms. We didn't slow down. The target was a Hive Tower Central, command node for the planet's neural grid. Its walls weren't walls. They were ribs. Its floors were tendons. Every step felt like walking inside something that knew we were there. We breached with anti-gravity charges and dove into the heart. Inside, the world changed. Drake architecture wasn't random. It was ritualistic. Symbols glowed across the inner. Sanctum circular, looping, recursive. The hive was no longer just a base. It was a cathedral. That's when we saw them. The priests, not soldiers. Not drones. Philosophers of war. They didn't fight. They sang. And every note they chanted caused the walls to shift. For eggs to hatch, for bile-colored light to pulse through the tower's spinal column. Brody fired first. One shot, center forehead. Then I gave the order. No witnesses. We cleared the chamber with grenades, flanking. THERMITE. Every wall caught fire. Every egg screamed. I found the hatchery's control core biological, wired to a Solari child still alive and twitching with residual thoughts. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger. No mercy. Not after what we'd seen. When we emerged, the sky was black with ash. The tower burned behind us. We didn't speak, because something had changed. We were no longer hunting the Drake. We were becoming what they feared, what the galaxy whispered about in corridors and darkened council rooms. Earth's apex predators. They sent us to respond to a cry for help. We responded with fire, and we would keep responding. Until the stars went silent. They called it a win. Command logged the operation as sector sanitized, hive node. E-7 cleared. Simple, efficient, sterile. No mention of the bodies. No footage of the Solari children twisted into neural anchors. Just numbers. Enemies neutralized. 1,276 friendly casualties, 48 survivors. 0 verdict, clean, but I didn't feel clean. None of us did. 3 days after the Nest Prime purge, the Reapers were back on the Sovereign vengeance, licking our wounds in silence. The medbay was overrun. The mess hall was empty. The air recycling system couldn't scrub the stench of burning Drake tissue from the ship's vents. Carter hadn't spoken since the orbital strike. His neural rig had overheated mid-run, leaving half his face twitching from electric recoil. They patched him up, hooked him into cryostim. Sawed he'd be stable within a week. I knew better. Brody sat in the shadow of the cargo bay, still in armor, eyes dead. He hadn't removed his weapon rig since the last drop. Not even to sleep. Me, I was in the war deck, watching the replay. Again. Nest Prime collapsing. Screams in my coms. Reapers torn apart. Black fire licking. The sky like the world itself wanted to end. I replayed it because I had to feel it. Because I couldn't afford to forget. If we forgot, if we let the numbness win, we were already dead. Grant entered quietly. Not a stomp, not a bark. Just presence thick, heavy old. He watched the footage for a while. Said nothing, then he handed me a new dossier. Target. Drake Fortress Moon Gamma 12 Objective. Breeding Regulation Satellite Secondary Target. Command Data Vault Status. High priority unrecoverable technology must be denied. I didn't even blink. How many civilians? Grant didn't answer. Just walked out. That was the answer. When I brought the data back to the squad, Brody just stared. Carter, still wired into a medbay rig, glanced at me like he'd heard the news before I spoke. What's the difference? Carter rasped. Military, civilian. They all bleed the same once the orders drop. I hated how much I agreed with him. The ship launched 6 hours later. No ceremony, no declarations. Just the Reapers boarding a war-torn frigate repurposed for infiltration. The nightfall edge, dark, silent, fast. We arrived above Moon Gamma with no resistance. No fighters, no scouts. Just one transmission on loop. It wasn't SALAR. It wasn't Drake. It was us. Old Earth transmission. Distorted, but unmistakable. Broadcast from one of our first terraforming AI colonies. Decades old. Long thought lost. The voice played on repeat, broken by static. We made them smart. We didn't think they'd learn wrath. Then it repeated. We made them smart. We didn't think they'd learn wrath. The Drake had captured it, repurposed it, played it back like a message. We dropped anyway. Touched down on black ice. Atmosphere was thin, sharp like glass against the lungs. Even through sealed suits, the chill hit bone. What we found inside wasn't a hive. It was a lab. Human architecture, fused with biogrown tissue, Drake biology, intertwined with Earth tech, our satellites, our fiber optics, our terraforming cores, and it was all running on a Solari neural grid. A living, breathing, thinking machine grown out of suffering. Carter gasped through the feed. They've cracked human interface protocols. This isn't just war. They're building something with our code. Brody growled. No, they're building us. We moved deeper, clearing rooms like rituals. Every wall pulsed, every floor rippled. Sometimes the corridors whispered. Not voices, just breath. Like the whole structure was waiting. In the central chamber, we found the vault, but it wasn't. Metal. It was alive. A Solari elder still conscious was integrated into the data spine. Mouth sewn shut, eyes glowing with feedback. His brain was the encryption. I raised my weapon. He looked at me. And in my head, I heard him scream. Not a warning, not a threat, a plea. Don't become them. I fired. Not because I had to, because I couldn't take the look in his eyes anymore. We extracted the core, planted charges, and burned the moon to ash. The detonation registered as a 7.2 seismic event on the nearby Drake planet. Command was thrilled. One less node. One more win. But I didn't log it as a victory. I didn't file the report. Instead, I walked into Carter's medbay, sat down, and whispered, "They're not just copying us. They're reflecting us." He blinked slowly. You ever wonder what the galaxy sees when it looks at Earth now? I didn't answer, because I already knew. It doesn't see hope. It doesn't see salvation. It sees us. The Reapers of Silence. The wolves who answered a scream with extinction. The orders came in cold. No mission brief, no dialogue. Just coordinates burned into our neural feeds and one phrase flashing in white. Breach. Burn. Leave no trace. That was all. No enemy intel. No projected resistance. Just a time and a place. Brody looked at the feed like it insulted him. No trace? That's what we tell the world when we wipe out whole cities. Carter's voice, barely recovered, came over the come line. We've stopped leaving traces for a while now. They just finally started saying it out loud. The target was listed as Operation Vault Echo. Location: an underground compound 6 miles beneath the scorched surface of Varex's second moon. An uninhabited rock not listed on any Solari star charts. That was the first red flag. The second: Was worse. When we dropped in stealth vector, silent entry, grav dampeners active, we didn't find Drake Tech. We found ours. The corridors were steel, earth steel, built with familiar codes, familiar welds, familiar security panels. There were no guards, no patrols. Just silence. It wasn't alien. It was a facility. The walls had that artificial hum, low, electric, almost like a whisper. The Reapers moved in formation, weapons up, suits sealed. No banter, no speculation. We passed through 6 levels. Empty. Then level 7. That's where we saw the cages. 30 of them, each one holding what looked like Solari at first. Thin, pale. Spinal cords bristling with embedded fiber. Eyes dim, but they weren't Solari. Not anymore. They were hybrids, earthborn. Tissue laced with Drake exochitin. Grown, not born. Built, not bred. Each one connected to an uplink port in the back of the skull, coded in Earth military encryption. A single tag beneath each cage. Project Ascendance. Test subject. Active sync. Carter gasped through the two. Uplink. Jesus. They're using Earth's drone AI interface ... reversed, not to control the hybrids. To let them pilot our drones. Brody stepped back. They're creating something worse than the Drake. Worse than us. I opened one of the cages. The thing inside looked at doubt, not with rage, not with fear, with understanding. Then it whispered, "You came too late." I slammed the cage shut. "Plant the charges." "No," Carter said. "Wait, look at this." He accessed a secured console at the end of the room. The encryption melted under his neural signature, because it had been coded by someone who used his own designs. What we saw next rewired every belief we had left. Footage. Archive logs. Months' worth. Date stamped after the Hive Queen's death. All on Earth time, subjects being brought in. Some Solari, some ... human. Prisoners, former soldiers, trauma candidates. Each one strapped to gurneys. Each one forced to watch Drake breeding rituals. Each one injected with memory streams harvested from dead Reapers. One of them was screaming. I paused the footage. It was Vance. He'd died 6 weeks ago, on Nest Prime. But here he was, hooked to a feed, replaying death, over and over. His scream, fed into a hybrid cocoon in the corner. Brody turned away and vomited inside his suit. I stood still, because I couldn't look away. Carter's voice was shaking now. This isn't war. This is manufacturing. Earth isn't winning anymore. It's harvesting pain and weaponizing it. He accessed another file. Project Seedfall. Planetary distribution orders. Hybrid nodes to be embedded in non-Earth colonies. Time delay triggers. Civilian integration masks. Activation protocols tied to potential rebellion thresholds, not just extermination, preemptive. Genocide. If any species ever rose to defy Earth's control, we wouldn't have to invade. They'd already be infected. By us. Brody whispered, "We're not soldiers. We're soil, carriers, inoculations for obedience." The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves knew we'd seen too much. We planted the charges. Anyway, fire wouldn't erase the crime, but at least it would scar the ground so no one could forget. On our way out, we found one final chamber. Cryo pods. 50 of them. Inside each, a child. Not Drake. Not Solari. Not human. All of them. Blended. Gene scrambled. Hybridized. Programmed from birth. Not for war. For rule. The next generation of diplomats. Genocidal peacekeepers grown in silence. None of us spoke. Didn't give the order. Brody did. He torched them. Every one. And we didn't look back. When the facility went up, the ground above it cracked like an open wound. The flames reached into the sky. The cum feed from Earth remained silent, but in that silence, I heard the truth. We weren't the answer to the galaxy's cry for help. We were the experiment that went too far. We knew they'd come. You don't burn a facility like Vault Echo and walk away. Not from Earth, not after what we saw. We didn't bother asking for forgiveness. We weren't looking for absolution. We were trying to buy one more day before the sky fell in on us. It fell faster than expected. The Sovereign Vengeance received a command override less than 8 hours after the destruction of the hybrid lab. Full lockdown, engines frozen, communication severed, navigation scrambled. And then came the signal, UNSRB Alpha Strike Engage Protocol Reclamation. Translated, you've been marked. Carter was still recovering from his sync spike, barely conscious. His neural rig sparking like a lightning storm under his skin. Brody was already suiting up when I hit the medbay. 72 hours, he said flatly, clipping ammo into a belt. That's how long it took. They were waiting. They always were, I replied. We didn't have time to argue. We stole a scout corvette from Dock 3, a repurposed smuggler hull with stealth plating and no ID tags. It barely had enough thrust to clear orbit, but it was fast and forgettable. We called it the Hollow Man. Fitting. We didn't head back to Earth. We didn't go to Mars, Luna, or the sanctioned colonies. We went where Earth didn't follow. Black Hollow, an abandoned Terra settlement on Mars' far side, buried beneath red storms and old secrets. Brody had contacts there. Quiet people, off-grid, armed, angry. People like us. We set Carter up in a crater shelter, low emissions, zero AI. Presence. Kept him sedated and shielded, neural dampeners locked tight. The hybrid feedback loop in his skull still hadn't gone dormant. Some nights he screamed. Other nights he whispered names that didn't exist, but the worst nights were when he said nothing at all. I spent my days re-watching the Vault Echo data. Project Seedfall, the Spliced Children. The Earth-sanctioned test executions logged as compliant stress events. The footage of Reaper squads unknowingly escorting bioagents into planetary systems. We weren't just the response, we were the payload. And that made us dangerous. So, Earth sent someone personal. His name was Commander Marcus Steele. Brody knew him. From Ganymede. He's the kind of bastard that thinks discipline starts after torture. Steele didn't send drones. He came himself. A new flagship appeared in Martian low orbit. Not marked. Not broadcast. Just a massive obsidian silhouette, too sleek for Dreadnought class, too quiet for anything civilian. No announcements. No diplomatic signals. Just a single line of code broadcast across all nearby channels. This is your reckoning. He didn't say it. The ship did. 3 nights later, they hit Black Hollow. Not with bombs. With precision. 6 figures in prototype suits. Earth's newest kill squad null profile assassins, built to erase problems without ever leaving DNA behind. But we weren't civilians. We were their mistake. We met them in the red sand outside the shelter. Brody took out 2 with homemade grav mines. I dropped another before he even drew. The last 3 got close. Too close. They moved like shadows. No hesitation. No humanity. They were fast, but we were angry. Carter woke up screaming in the middle of the firefight. Blood leaking from his ears. Eyes wild with something half-human. He stood barefoot, trembling, and whispered, "They're not here for me. They're here for what I remember." Then he walked into the dark with a plasma cutter and a dead man's calm, and he cut them down. Afterward, I tried to speak, to say anything, but Carter just looked at me and said, "They made me to kill. Now I get to choose who." We buried the suits, stripped the gear, rewired the Corvette, left the crater burning. From that moment on, the Reapers were ghosts. Not dead, not alive, not loyal. Just free. And that was the most dangerous thing we'd ever been. But Earth didn't stop. A week later, we intercepted a data packet from a deep space relay, hidden code buried in civilian transmissions. It wasn't meant for us, but it was about us. Project Orpheus, Earth's first sentient hybrid dreadnought, powered by a human consciousness permanently fused with a Solari neural scaffold. Host, female. Age, 16. Condition, induced obedience. Codename Nerra. She was held on the Bastion, a lunar cradle station with triple-layered shielding and orbital kill nets. They weren't just building monsters anymore. They were growing queens, and they were getting faster at it. I looked at Carter. He looked at the floor. Brody walked in and said the only thing that made sense. We end this. Not with a broadcast, not with a bomb, with a name. We didn't plan for diplomacy. We planned for impact. 3 soldiers, a stolen ship, and one forgotten girl wired into the future of extinction. This wasn't revenge. This was rescue for her. For Carter. For all the lives Earth would erase next. And we knew what came after. They wouldn't forgive us. They'd hunt us forever. But we weren't afraid of the hunt anymore, because the wolves they made stopped wearing leashes a long time ago. We came in hot. No stealth, no diversion, no pretense. The Hollow Man roared across space like a wounded predator, its patched engines screaming as we tore into high Earth orbit, radar signatures dirty and flickering. The Bastion cradle station, set like a spider in the dark, silent, black, enormous. Triple-layered defense rings spun around, its core like the jaws of a trap, but we weren't trying to slip past. We were trying to break teeth. Still remember Brody's voice over the comms. As we breached the outer defense grid, they think we're here to sabotage their future. He paused. They're wrong. We're here to steal it. The Bastion didn't blink. It opened its mouth and swallowed us. Missiles came first. Smart tracking, 0 delay, coded with our old squad tags to avoid friendly fire failsafes. Carter grunted behind me, already jacked into the tactical uplink, rerouting control spikes and flooding the grid with backdoor command loops. Earth taught him how to break enemies. Now he was breaking the machine that made him. Brody fired anti-armor charges from the rear bay, clearing a hole in the Bastion's spinal corridor. We dove. I led the breach. Plasma torch in one hand, cutter in the other. No orders, no mercy. Just muscle memory and rage. The inside of the station was wrong. Too quiet, too bright. Everything curved and clean, as if sterilized from history. No blood, no screams. Just silence. That scared me more than the missiles. Moved through 4 levels without resistance. Just cameras. Watching. Recording. Then, finally, someone greeted us. Marcus Steele. The man Earth called its surgical knife. The one they unleashed when planets got ideas above their rank. He stepped into the hallway alone, armor polished, rifle at his side. He didn't raise it. I expected sooner, he said. I kept my aim leveled. You expected we'd let her die. Steele shook his head. No, I expected you'd trade her for your own peace. He gestured behind him. You can't win, son. She's not yours to save. I'm not your son, I said. Brody flanked. Carter's drone hovered overhead, targeting. Systems hot. Steele raised his hand slowly. I built Reapers. You think I didn't prepare for when one turned? You didn't prepare for 3. I pulled the trigger. 3 shots, all center mass. Steele collapsed against the white wall, leaving a smear of red on synthetic purity. We moved past him, didn't check the body. Didn't speak. We found her in the core. Chamber. 16. Pale. Wired into a neural frame pulsing with blue light and Drake glyphs. Her spine fused to a crystal growth that hummed with stolen psionics. She didn't scream. She looked at me. Eyes too old, too tired. Then she said, "They said I dream of flowers, but I only ever saw fire." We cut her free. The neuroframe fought us. Tendrils lashed, alarms howled, the station AI shrieked in error tones. Carter gripped the side of the rig, his skull trembling with every pulse of feedback. Blood ran from his nose, from his ears. He screamed as the circuits burned. Brody held her. I carried Carter. We ran as the cradle shook behind us, as the core overload began. Steele had triggered the failsafe. If he couldn't keep her, he'd erase her. We reached the hangar deck. The Hollow Man roared in, battered and burning. Behind us, the bastion crumbled. Not in fire, but in silence, because when we pulled her free, something cracked inside the network. Something Earth tried to bury. Nerra wasn't just a pilot. She was a mirror. She reflected everything Earth had become, and she was still alive. We escaped with seconds to spare. On board, Carter collapsed in my arms. Nerra sat motionless, hooked to life support, whispering things in a language I didn't recognize, but I felt it. Old words. Sad words. Brody set course for the outer rim, past the reach of Earth's surveillance. We didn't talk. There were no congratulations. Just the weight of it. Of her, of Carter, bleeding in silence, of everything we'd burn behind us. And what we'd have to burn next. Because Earth wouldn't stop. We had their mirror, and now the galaxy would see. The Hollow Man drifted in blackout. No signals, no thrust. Just a ghost across the stars, wrapped in borrowed metal and silence. Nerra slept beneath the medbay flicker lamps, her body stitched with cooling pads, her spine leaking residual data pulses that scrambled nearby equipment. Every now and then, her lips moved in her sleep, whispers in a dialect no human should know. Carter hadn't spoken in 30 hours. He sat beside her, staring blankly at the wall, his neural ports sealed shut with biofoam and desperation. His hands trembled when they weren't clenched. Brody paced the deck with a sidearm always in reach, and me. I stared at the void. Waiting for the sky to catch fire. It did. 2 days after we escaped the bastion, the transmission came through. Not a link, not a military hail, a burn code. Direct neural injection. One-way feed. Earth's voice poured into our skulls like venom wrapped in protocol. UNSRP Command Directive OOZ. Operation Eulogy. They weren't sending a team. They were sending a warship. We caught the pulse trail on long-range passive scan massive. Cold, cloaked, and silent. Designation: Loyal Ascendancy, Earth's newest flagship. Built with integrated Drake biomass. Faster than anything in the fleet. Smarter than any AI we ever trusted. Piloted by a consensus engine made from captured psionic feedback loops extracted from the minds of reapers who died screaming. It was us, stripped for parts, fused to silence, and now it was coming. To erase what we'd become. We had one option. We don't run. We broadcast. I looked at Brody. You ready? He nodded once. Let's wake the galaxy. I jacked into the Hollow Man's uplink core, bypassed every safety gate, and fed it all. Every log. Every kill list, every black site, every neural sync experiment. We dumped it into the open net, encrypted, tagged, sent to every corner of the known galaxy. Solari relays, neutral colonies, fringe outposts, even Earth's own public feeds. But it wasn't just data. It was proof. Footage of Solari elders wired into reactors. Children crying in hybrid. Birthing tubes. Carter screaming as his memories were extracted. Nerra in the bastion, whispering "help me," as her body was used to power extinction. We gave the galaxy one message. This is peace. The Earth kind. And then we turned the feed toward the Loyal Ascendancy. Not a weapon. A mirror Nerra sat upright for the first time since her extraction. Her eyes lit with blue flame. "I remember them now," she whispered. "All of them." She accessed the uplink node. Her voice went into the stream. Not as words, as resonance, a psionic feedback loop born from every pain Earth had buried. She didn't try to destroy the ascendancy. She made it feel. The pain of Vance. Dying in a nest. The echo of Carter's stolen mind. The betrayal of every Reaper. Used as a blueprint for a weapon. The ascendancy didn't explode. It shuddered. Its hull rippled. Its lights flickered. And then it screamed. Not audibly. Psychiclly. The ship buckled from within, bleeding molten biometal from its seams. Its memory core ruptured. Its biomass convulsed. Inside, we knew. The consensus mind was reliving every atrocity Earth had fed it. Every soldier it absorbed. Now a voice in the choir of agony. The ascendancy veered off course, spun toward Jupiter's gravity well, and vanished into its depths like a dying god swallowed by judgment. We sat in silence. No cheers. No celebration. Just the soft whir of cooling fans and Nerra's quiet breath. Brody finally spoke. "What now?" Carter looked up. Double quotes now. "They know." He was right. Across the stars, the reaction began. The Solari cut diplomatic ties. The Telari broadcast our leak on every frequency they had. 3. Earth-allied colonies declared neutrality overnight. Earth didn't speak. Not officially, but they moved fleets, positioned drones, opened recruitment for a new Reaper program. Because Earth never apologizes. It rebuilds. And us? We stayed dark, drifting between black systems, watching, waiting, preparing. Because the truth was out. The galaxy had seen the monster behind the mask, and the only question now was, what would they do when it turned to face them? The Hollow Man drifted far beyond charted space now. No signals, no safe harbors, no star maps left. We lived on static and memory. The galaxy had changed, but Earth hadn't bled out yet. The beast still moved, still breathed. And when cornered, Earth didn't surrender. It adapted. First came the blackout zones. Earth burned every relay we'd used, scrubbed names, erased logs. Anyone who repeated our leak vanished off World. Then came the counter-narrative, that we were rogue war criminals, that Nerra was a terrorist, that Carter had been mentally unstable, that I-Field Captain Adrien Keir had betrayed his species for alien influence. They put my face on wanted posters, said I was infected, said I was inhuman. The irony burned. They were half right. Brody said we should have expected it. He was right, but it still stung. I didn't care about the lies. I cared that people believed them. And still, some DIDN single quotes. We started hearing whispers on back channels, in encrypted star fields, from smugglers who'd seen Earth operatives running scared. The Reapers weren't just ghosts now. We were becoming legend. And legends are hard to kill. We were planning our next strike when Nerra collapsed. No warning. No pulse spikes, just silence. Her vitals crashed and her neural net went wild, screaming in a language only she could understand. Carter was first to reach her. He knelt beside her as she twitched, spasming, her back arching against the medbay. Slab. Brody held her down. I scanned her core. That's when we saw it. She wasn't just connected to Earth's psionic network anymore. She was connected to everything. Something had activated her latent memory pathways. Some seed Earth planted had matured. The Bastion hadn't been a lab. It had been a beacon. Her mind had sensed to something far out, something Earth hadn't told anyone about. Project Seedfall wasn't stopped. It had already launched, buried in colonies, sleeping in satellites, hiding in children. The truth hadn't burned Earth's ambitions down. It had just forced them to accelerate. Carter turned pale. They knew we'd leak. It was the distraction. While the galaxy looked at us, they moved to Phase 2. Brody hit the console, pulling up remote pings. 13 colonies. 11 independent. Systems. All showing sudden communication drops. Pulse beacons offline. No AI feedback. Nothing. Then, one by one, they lit up again. Same signature. Same frequency. Same language. Nerra had whispered in her sleep. We weren't looking at an invasion. We were looking at seeds. Blooming. Earth wasn't conquering anymore. It was rewriting. Using pain. Using silence. Using minds like Nerra's to code a new kind of control. The realization dropped on us like gravity. Returning after a dream, there was no going back. Not to peace, not to rebellion, not to rest. We didn't have time to argue. We had one choice. We loaded the holo. Man, with every weapon we'd stolen, every archive we'd preserved, every beacon we could fire. We set coordinates for the first seed site, the colony of Deadliest 3, Earth territory turned silent 2 days prior. On arrival, it was worse than we imagined. Not fire. Not war. Perfection. People smiling. Uniforms crisp. Children marching in time. No pain. No crime. Just harmony. Unnatural. Hollow wrong. We hacked their local network. Found the core. A girl. No older than Nerra, plugged into a seed node beneath the capital. And Earth's logo stamped across her chest plate. Peace through integration. We didn't hesitate. We pulled her out. The people screamed not in horror, but in disobedience, like something had cracked inside them. The colony shut down, lights flickered, streets emptied, drones spiraled into seizure. They weren't human anymore. They were SYNCED. We left no survivors, and Nerra cried the whole time. I remember all of them, she whispered. And they remember me. That was when we knew what had to come next. We couldn't save the galaxy. We couldn't rebuild Earth, but we could do one last thing. We could make sure no one ever made monsters like us again. Carter volunteered first. He uploaded his entire mind fractured, burned, weaponized into the virus payload. Brody seeded the coordinates. Nerra encoded her own pain, her dreams, her memories, the echo of every scream inside the bastion. I handled the launch. Not to a target. To everywhere. The signal lit up across the stars. Every seed site. Every relay. Every eye drone. Every human-aligned system. Not a bomb. Mirror. Not to kill. To make them feel. To see what we saw. To remember. And then we shut the Hollow Man down. We didn't leave coordinates. We didn't send goodbyes. We drifted into the edge of the black, where signals die and no one listens. Nerra sleeps now, her mind quieter. Carter's voice is in the ship's code. Brody sits beside the airlock, watching stars that no longer fear us. And me? I keep writing so they remember. So someone remembers. Because Earth doesn't forget, but it does lie. It teaches soldiers to burn for peace and monsters to smile for the camera. But we broke free. We weren't heroes. We were what Earth made and then tried to bury. Now we're the echo in their silence, the virus in their perfection. And if someone ever cries for help again, they should pray Earth doesn't answer, because the wolves it made don't come back home.